Are Chinese people in the dark about global issues? Are they plugged in? Or are they just eating whatever the government has to offer and taking it as cold hard facts? Hi! 你好。
你好。
我拍一个节目。
拍什么啦？
节目。
啊？
一个节目。视频。
Oh.
Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Nuance. I'm actually talking to you from my apartment complex. Right behind me I have an old man that lives on the first floor right next to this place I decided to sit, and he's very interested in playing a part in today's episode. If you guys don't know, I'm in China, south of Shanghai, in a city called Ningbo, and I'm looking at topics from a nuanced perspective to try to give you a little insight into my thoughts on matters. There's a hell of a lot of people on the hate China, and there's a hell of a lot of people on the love China, and I'm trying to reside a little bit more to the center. But me being in China for so long, I do think that I have a little bit of a grasp on some issues. So today's issue is, are Chinese people not informed? Are they aware of global issues? Are they aware of issues freely in order to judge one way or another? Well, that's a sticky topic, right? That is neither black and white. It's gray for sure. China, everybody knows it, has a restriction on certain websites. There's a lot of information that if you're simply going by the phone in your hand and the computer in front of you, that you might not be able to access without access to a VPN. You wouldn't be seeing this video if I did not have a VPN. There's a lot of talk about whether VPNs are breaking the law. I certainly know a lot of officials in China. I know, people who work in government, but I also know regular people. I know many people who have VPNs who are Chinese nationals, and I have never once been told that what you're doing needs to stop. But without a VPN, you cannot access certain pools of information. So let's start with that, the facts, right? The fact is that most Western social media you can't access. So there's no Facebook, there's no YouTube, there's no Quora, which bugs me. I really like Quora. It's a great way to get really nuanced opinions on issues. I wish that one was more readily available without VPNs. But there are some sources of information that you might be surprised can be accessed. Currently, CNN can be accessed. Fox News, I was just checking that off my VPN. I was just kind of checking to see what I could, because sometimes things jump on and jump off. The government will switch off an IP or a source or switch it on. It happens. Yahoo News is available, and Skype. Skype doesn't work very reliably. I much rather use WeChat, but these are actually interesting sources of information on both sides. I kind of found it interesting that CNN as well as Fox News was both available for me to view here in China. So if somebody was interested in checking the putting their finger on the pulse of global news, there's also a lot more. I just kind of picked those because I'm an American, and those are the cherry-picked ones from America. People get their information from a lot of places, and there's a lot of people in China who I think are more plugged in than people in my hometown or in America. And I'll give you an example. My wife is an agent for a company that buys goods in China. And she has to understand where her customers live. She talks with them every night in their country, in South America. And she's so plugged in that she tells me about things going on in those countries with regards to geopolitics or culture that I don't even know. That kind of brought me into understanding this issue from a new perspective. I don't know if it's a willful ignorance thing or just blatant disregard, but there's a lot more places to get the finger on the pulse of the world rather than news. As a matter of fact, today traditional mainstream media is actually considered as a bad source in many groups for the real information on the ground. Word of mouth, understanding where people are and talking to them in that place at that time, I think is a useful way to find out what's going on in the world. It's one of the reasons that I love travel. There's no better way to get a handle on the world than to go into it and around it. I didn't really think that everything said about North Korea was on its face perfect and correct. So what did I do? I went to North Korea. And I met some people and I talked to some people and I understood that I was looking at the country through a tourist filter, but it still allowed me an opportunity to kind of tangibly look at it. I've cycled through countries like Laos and Cambodia and Thailand and Malaysia and different places, India and all over. And I've always found that sitting down and having a talk with somebody and being able to understand where they're coming from was much better in many cases than actually listening to some biased news story that was slanted intentionally to coax a reaction or get clicks, or I'm basically trying to get clicks, so maybe I'm in that group. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me. You know what, to be honest, you shouldn't all listen to me 100%. That's what Nuance is about. Take what you can and adjust your thinking based on what maybe I've been able to reveal for you, and then we go from there. I will never say I'm right on all things, and as a matter of fact, if I do say a statistic that you think is wrong, go ahead, shout me out. Let me know in the comment section, and we'll move on from that. But let me get back. So my wife, she does business all over the world. She knows and is plugged in with people all over the world. There's a hell of a lot of people in China who are dispersed and sprinkled all around the world. And those people are constantly reporting back. In many cases, they're making money for their families. Maybe they're working in a foreign country to make money to send back home. Every time they call their family back home, to communicate, they're sharing information or sharing what life is like, what culture is like, what government is like. Geez, they're really harping on China these days. Oh, geez, this has been said in the media. Oh, geez, coronavirus is doing this. I mean, all the topics of the day are flowing across the borders of China without regard for the Great Firewall of China. It doesn't really matter in this way of passing information. So let's try and just get a handle on how broad that is. I looked up some statistics, and in 2018, that's still a few years ago, there were 662,100 Chinese students studying abroad. And that is an interesting number, right? So if your kid is studying abroad in America or in the West or anywhere else, they are literally absorbed. There's no better way to plug into a place on this earth than go to a university and live with other students and listen to what their families are doing. And it's not like, in some cases you might be able to go somewhere for work and you're pretty much going from the office to home, the office to home. But in a school environment, you're just intermingling with everybody. And in many cases, people from all over the world are coming together. So you're not only learning about that country, but you're learning about the country of the other students that they've come from. As a matter of fact, share a personal story. There's a guy named Harrison who is a friend of my sister, and here in China, my wife's sister. And Harrison is going to high school. He is going to school in America right now. The pandemic has created some interesting circumstances where it's not so easy to travel from China to America or America back, and his family has tried to figure out the best way to do it. And so what he's doing is every night he turns on his computer and he does a live education in America. I'm not 100% sure which state. We will figure all that out, because what I told him was that I'd like to do an interview with him. He was doing a project in sociology or geopolitics, and he was actually talking about social issues in America. He was actually given a project where he had to make like a podcast, and he was making it about some Chinese issues that he was hoping to bring to the eyes of his students and use his experiences here on the ground here in China on a class project on the ground there in the United States. What an amazing thing that is, And it really kind of dispels a lot, I think, because way back in the day, before internet, before such easy connectivity, if you lived in China, you were away from America, and if you lived in America, you were away from China. And if you were anywhere, you were away from everywhere else, the ability to communicate, especially across countries, was very, very difficult. But today it's ubiquitous. It's very easy. As a matter of fact, Harrison is going to go to school tonight and have his Friday class. Think about in the comments section, what types of questions would you like to ask a local Ningbo Chinese boy going to school in America via internet from China? And put them in the comment section below. Whatever you might be curious about, let me know. I bought these two receivers, audio transmitters and receivers, so we'll be able to sit down and have a really nice interview with Harrison in a future episode. So let me know. So okay, so there's 662,100 Chinese students that are studying abroad, bringing all that information back home. Of course, it's not just 662,000 kids. We're talking about their family and extended family, because if you're in China and your family, your kid is going to university abroad, that is one of the most cherished things that a Chinese family can feel. Oh, my son is studying in Colorado, or my daughter is studying in France, or my nephew or my grandchild or whatever. And when they come home, they share everything. It is a very interesting, because everybody's sitting around them like, oh, what is this going on, and how is this felt over here, and what is this going on? And there is a fairly inquisitive nature to Chinese, that they kind of are interested in finding out what is going on from their kids' perspective. And so there's a sharing there. What about just traveling? Because Chinese are avid travelers, much more today than they were a decade ago, and they can travel. As a matter of fact, my wife has a 10-year visa to America, and she can get visas pretty easy. Now, they can't get visas everywhere. China does have restrictions on where they might be able to go in certain countries, just like most countries have some travel restrictions. I'm lucky to be an American to have one of the more broad opportunities to travel around the world, but even I have places that I think if I went to Iraq, I couldn't go to Israel, or Israel to Iraq. Some of those things are a little bit difficult, but most of the world is open to me, and most of the world is open to Chinese, and they're taking advantage of it. And you know, there's something you can be said about your child going to school abroad. There's another thing talking about you going abroad and seeing the world for yourself. And you know, as soon as you get in that airplane, as soon as you land, the Great Firewall's gone. And the ability to absorb whatever information you might want is there, and you can share that with your friends back home. You know, so it's not like what I think people think about. Like once you get to China, the walls come down, the curtains come down, and there's no way to peek through those curtains. There's a million ways to peek through those curtains if you want to. And I'll tell you what, there's another aspect to this, that sometimes people just don't plug in. They don't want to. They're busy with their lives. They're going from point A to point B and doing things, and that's okay too. So I mean, there's those people in America too. Those people are everywhere. But yeah, there's 169.2 million Chinese nationals that travel every year. At least that was in 2019. 2020 and 2021, that was, you know, obviously those numbers are going to be quite low, but 169 million people traveled abroad, saw the world for themselves, came back to China, shared it with their families. So I'm not saying that people can't get it without sharing it from their families, but this is just another way for Chinese people to learn about the world and understand issues. Let's see. Well, you could be a student, you could be a tourist, but you could also be a resident. There's, I checked 50 million Chinese that are living outside China today. So 50 million people who are Chinese nationals are now living abroad. I'm telling you guys, the conversations that people have here are very, very open. I have had conversations with WeChat with my friends here in China about my opinions on the situation in Xinjiang. I've shared my thoughts on Hong Kong and Taiwan, which I don't have a lot of opinions about those. I'm trying to grasp those situations more, but I have very, very deep conversations with lots of people, and those people have conversations with other people. The ability to have the conversations in order to build ideas in your head are quite open. And there were many times I've had conversations that I'm like, if there were aggressive censors out there, they would probably be knocking on my door for what I just talked about, and the knock never came on the door. So I'm not saying that if you say certain things, maybe something, I'm not sure what it would be, but you'd have to probably get pretty aggressively revolutionary and like building a bomb or something. Then they definitely have systems to stop those sorts of violent acts out. But I've never been witness to it. That's the other thing, guys. These videos, these Nuance videos, are about my introspection into data that I find, combined with my experience on the ground, but they are my experiences. Other people might have different ones, but I feel like being able to share what you see and what you think is important, especially if you're basing it on integrity, and I'm trying to make sure that it's balanced and open. Okay, so we got 50 million people living outside China. Those people have family here in China. Most of them have family that are still here in China. There's 3.8 million people who are literally living in America. 3.8 million Chinese are living in America today. So they all are watching the same news. They're all seeing the same things. They're all absorbing the same information. And to think that they're not sharing it with people back home is naive. They are most certainly doing it. Okay, so Chinese people are not subjugated to only having access to Chinese propaganda. Okay, so I hope we've dispelled that. They have opportunities to view information from multiple sources and access that information freely. I think that not to be overstated or understated, workers here in China, because China is the factory of the world still. They're making the lion's share of the stuff that people buy all over the world. And all over the world, product designers, engineers, business owners, CEOs, quality control, all of those people are communicating with their counterparts in Chinese factories. Those counterparts in those Chinese factories must understand the culture of the people that they're dealing with. A lot like my wife dealing on an agency way. But there are people that millions and millions and millions of people here in this country every night that flick on their computer, depending on the time zone. Night for America, but there's people that deal in the Middle East, there's people that deal in Australia, there's people that deal with logistical companies all over the place. And they go home or go to the office, flick on their computer and say, hey Ralph, how's it hanging in Argentina? Hey Bill, what's going on in Paraguay? Hey Sharir, what is going on in Iran? And in many cases, you'll have people in these Chinese companies sitting at a Chinese desk that will have a nuanced understanding of countries spotted all throughout the world. Whereas you in America or wherever you are, you might flick on the TV, local TV, you'll know the news in that area. There's a Chinese person sitting behind a desk that has a way better understanding of the entire world than you will ever understand, or than you understand. I'm not going to say ever. You always have a chance to know more. And they're living in a country that most people would say has no access to information. I think that's pretty crazy, right? That's pretty amazing. I mean, I have met some people here that speak Chinese, Spanish, English, German, French, all at the same, they all speak all those languages, and they're using those language skills to talk to different people at different times, at different time zones, about different projects, and not to mention the projects themselves inform them about a community. Like why are there so many coffee makers? Oh, there must be a coffee maker culture in America, or tea to certain places, or something, some sort of product design specifically for a specific society. The engineers and everybody on the ground here have to understand why and how that society works in order to understand how to design that product. So there's a lot of in-depth understanding of other cultures and other societies with regards to actually communicating with factories overseas. It's quite amazing. Chinese that are living in mainland, and even expats, will lump them in together, have a select group of sources of the internet that they don't have access to. They also have a lot of internet that they do have access to. There is propaganda on the TV about, Chinese New Year celebrations and whatnot. There's outlets for news that are state-owned, like CCTV and CGTN and things like this. Just because they're state-owned doesn't mean all the information on them is wrong. Just because CNN is, leaning the way that they lean, there isn't nuance and facts in what they say. You have to be able to sift through those based on what you look at other sources and combine those things together to learn. But the flow of information over the Great Wall of China, out of China and into China, is like a raging river. And more than news media and social media, it's interpersonal connections. People who have relationships outside China and inside China that are sharing information back and forth. And there's people that are more plugged in than you could ever imagine that live right here in this repressive country. And I think that it would be naive for us to not appreciate that fact and understand that. But now let's go into the next step. I like to add these at some select episodes because I think they're important. The why. If you hear somebody say that people in China don't have access to information, that people in China don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, and for this reason we need to X, Y, and Z, let's analyze this for a second. So why do people want to make it sound like all Chinese people are in the dark? Well, first of all, it reinforces the idea that Chinese people are repressed and misinformed. With that information, you can say that they don't know what's going on in their own country, and they don't know what's going on outside. So, if they knew what was going on outside, they would for sure want to change their current standing in the world. They would for sure want to overthrow their government. It's just the fact that they just don't know. Well, a lot of them do know and share that knowledge with others, and the amount of people that are calling for revolution, I think, is probably pretty low these days. Let me add some nuance to that also to say that every government hides stuff that they do. I don't like it, and I don't like the reasons why they do it, but let's not kid ourselves to say that, every other government is just perfect, and it's only China that's, hiding information from their people. There's information manipulation going on everywhere. It's why I think it's important to understand that people get their information from all over the place, and that's how they learn about the world. Another reason why you might hear somebody say that Chinese don't know what's going on is it makes them sound ignorant. And if you can make a population sound ignorant, you can control them. You can say, we're just helping you. You just don't know. You just don't really understand the world. And, we're trying to save you guys. And it makes, talk of, of levying all sorts of measures against them easier to digest. It's okay. We're here working to help the Chinese. We're saving them. They really don't like what's going on there, or they wouldn't if they knew. There's a lot of reasons, but finally, I think it helps people pity Chinese and think, well, those poor Chinese, they're stuck in that authoritarian cesspool of garbage and filth, and I feel bad for them. Because when you feel bad for them, it weakens them and it strengthens you. If you're watching this in the West, or you're watching this somewhere else, you feel like, if they only knew, those poor SOBs, SOBs. And in doing so, it empowers the population that's outside China to make policies and stuff that might be overreaching. Listen, geopolitics is a complicated thing. Trade policy, understanding situations that are going on in the world, certain situations that might have gotten out of control, or repressive situations. Those are important things to know about. And I'm obviously referring to Xinjiang, and I do want to make sure to make a video about that. I have opinions on it, and I want to share those opinions, but I want to make sure it's a very, very nuanced topic, and I want to make sure that I speak my mind clearly. But there's a lot of feeling like Chinese people have no idea what's going on in China. Let's even take Xinjiang out of this scenario. Lots of things. They feel, you can't see the world, you can't experience the world, so you don't know what's going on. You don't know how bad it is in China. And it's funny, a lot of the people that say they don't know how bad, you don't know how bad it is over there, have probably never been here. Well, I'm here, and this country's not perfect. Like I said, it's got some problems. All countries do. But to think that the Chinese cannot plug into the world and understand what's going on everywhere is, like I said, disingenuous. So that's my take on the situation. If you hear somebody say that, aggressively, overtly, that Chinese people are completely ignorant because they're restricted 100% in accessing, most of the most important things, I would have to say that the most important source of information that you can learn from the rest of the world is speaking to your friends and family and the people that you know. And as it stands, there's no restriction with regards to the people I've talked to or the people I've integrated with regards to talking to people abroad. So let me know what you think. Am I wrong? Am I right? Is there some nuance I've missed? Leave it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining me on this nuanced topic. And I'll try and pick some different areas to go. This is, like I said, my little apartment complex. It's a nice day out today, so I thought I'd do it outside. So thank you very much, Jayo. We'll catch you in the next one. And like, subscribe, share. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing. I've said this on a number of episodes, but if you are the first time to Nuance and never seen my face before, please say Gobbledygook in the comments. That's all you got to do is say Gobbledygook. It'll be something I can search, and just put that in there and let me know, because it would be very interesting to know who might be coming here out of nowhere. So any suggestions on future topics, let me know. I am open. There's a lot of topics on my docket that I want to talk about, but there's a lot of interviews I'd like to do. I'm looking forward to my interview with Harrison. If you have any questions for him, please leave those in the comment section below. Include his name, Harrison, in the comments so I can search for those comments and find those. And you have a great day, and you know what? If you know anybody overseas, give them a call. Ask them what's going on. They'll give you the straight up scoop.